Hmm?
You still don't own a PS5 Pro? What are you waiting for? Nintendo to make one?
Mhm.
You have seen the games, right? Wrong answer, man. Show them. Want to see more? PlayStation. So
That's
yeah,
all.
with the PS5 Pro, they, this is like, how long has it, like, they've been like leaks and everything, and now they finally reveal it, like,
Yeah,
uh
it's been like a year of like, oh, it's maybe more of like, oh, it's coming
then there's
soon.
like the PS5 Slim, which I think came out. I don't,
Yeah,
I,
it's like a couple millimeters thinner than the original.
yeah, yeah.
And you can,
It burned a few calories at the gym, you know.
yeah.
Um,
And it's not even like the typical generation Slim where it's like a solid like 200 or something less, you know.
yeah,
It's just cheaper because it doesn't come with the disk drive, or they have the Slim with the disk drive, which is like same price PS5 was, I think.
yeah, because who's gonna need discs anymore? All these games that come out, you need like a day one patch anyways. So who needs discs? You don't own any. You don't have to deal with like the inconvenience of like having to put the game somewhere and everything. Let's just minimize all the stress of that.
Yeah, minimize the stress of owning anything remotely tangible for your collection or for yourself as a consumer, even.
But hey, if you do have some games, we do have this disk drive here. Totally,
For 80
totally not.
bucks sold separately.
Wait, how much? 80?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, so the PS5 Slim without the
Jesus
disk drive is
Christ.
like 450, I think. And then the one with the disk drive is 500. But
Yeah,
if you
I remember
if you
that from like
buy
the launch. Yeah.
yeah, but if you buy it separately, you end up paying more because the disk drive is 80 bucks.
Wow.
And now we have the amazing, glorious, stunning, powerful, brave PS5 Pro, which doesn't even have the option to come with a disk drive. So that's
And no
700 bucks.
vertical stand.
Yeah,
It doesn't
and I
come.
think the
It comes.
stand is like 30 bucks too. So
I mean, it comes with a copy of Astro's Playroom with pre-installed, I
yeah,
guess, and
yeah.
it comes with a two terabyte SSD. You know, you don't have to worry about. You don't have to buy
You don't have to
going
delete your games as often.
as often. Um, might want to bring a hard drive if you want to play those PS4 games, though.
So yeah, if you want a proper console experience, which is being able to use your discs, that's an extra 80 bucks on top of the 700. And if you want that stand, that's like 30 bucks, I think. So you're paying over 800 bucks to get like the actual console as it should be.
And that's before you factor in like taxes,
Yeah,
fees, depending on who you're buying it from and whether they want you to be part of their pro membership or
yeah,
whatever, for delivery, if you just have things delivered to you or whatever. Um, you know, and it's so weird. I, it didn't hit me that it was like the $700 and that fact that we're back. It's going full free DO until you recommended that you share the Adam Korlick video,
yeah,
because I've been like so like out of touch with like, not like out of touch, but like so like apathetic to like the current console generation,
yeah,
that I was like it didn't hit me that it was $700. And granted, $700 for the free DO back in 93, I think it released.
yeah,
Is, adjusted for inflation, that would be more now. And you kind of look at the free DO, it's like you're impressive for like 1 year. You got a 1 year start
yeah,
on Sony, and that's about it.
yeah,
Um, and it's I mean, the thing is, I mean, like, let's go over, like, I mean, they haven't really. We were trying to look for like a spec sheet before recording this, and they haven't released anything like that. I mean, maybe there's like a leak or something, but
yeah.
who
It's
knows?
just like the official reveal video where they're like it has, you know, better hardware. But
Yeah,
even though they're saying that it's still like on the Zen 2 processor, it's still like the same processor, more or less. It's just the graphics card and it is beefed up a bit.
yeah, yeah. Well, probably not. I don't know if it's a graphics card. I mean, if it was a video card, then but yeah, I mean, I'm just going off of like the mega thread on r/PS5, and like there's only like three things that they're really highlighting right now. It's with the PS5, they're upgrading the GPU to have 67% more compute units than the current PS5 console, and the memory is going to be 28% faster. And
Oh boy.
overall, it'll enable up to like 45% faster rendering for gameplay and making supposedly making the experience more smooth, and ray tracing is going to look better, I guess. Apparently it'll allow the ray to be cast at double and at times triple the speeds of the current PS5 console.
Oh
And
man.
then you have AI driven upscaling. PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, an AI driven upscaling that uses machine learning based technology to provide super sharp image clarity by adding an extraordinary amount of detail. What does that mean? Like, the thing about here's the thing about consoles, and this is part of the reason why I'm a little apathetic about them these days,
Yeah.
is they're just computers nowadays. Like straight up, like a computer you could get um from like Best Buy.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially like ever since the last generation when they just like went all in on like x86 architecture and they're basically just AMD boxes now, just
yeah.
running a custom OS.
The problem was like with the PS4 and the Xbone, um, is like whenever they released, they were like anemic, like and it was during a time where there was kind of that meme, I think, for a lot of people until they watched a lot of like content creators, and certain content creators who would go and be like, hey, it's actually not that you don't need like $2,000 to get like a good computer to play these games
Yeah.
at way better than like but the granted, I mean the upfront cost like might look like hey, you're paying more money to like than like a PS4, like when it was brand new back in the day,
Yeah.
um but it was it was worth it. I think at least for myself anyways, because granted, I think everyone had that struggle with like PC gaming, is that they might have like a laptop or like a family computer,
Yeah.
and their mic is broken and they're only playing like the one or two levels that the computer can support, and then they finally get a job and they can, or maybe they're crazy, they save up like I did, and they get like you know they get like a computer that can play all these games, or if not all of them, then they can like upgrade it later. Um but it's weird though, because like ever since like like and the thing is like the 7th gen systems, at least they were not like x86 CPUs
Yeah.
that were running in those systems. It was something weird. It was not something that you could just go and jerry rig. Now you can just like jerry not that you can just like jerry rig a Jaguar CPU on a PS4. Um but the problem is whenever I can play most of the same games on computer, um because they get PC ports and stuff.
Yeah. Especially
Why am I
nowadays.
why am I buying a system other than the exclusives, which you know other than Nintendo, Sony was in like I think like this generation was like the last one that Xbox had some exclusives. Like I don't think you can get Halo 5 um on PC.
It's not in the Master Chef collection.
No, that's only Halos 1 through 4. It's basically the
Wow.
Xbox 360 slash OG Xbox collection. Um,
Interesting. I could have sworn they added it later on.
I don't know. I have the game on my Steam account. I haven't really
Yeah.
checked it out in like forever. I have to like make a Microsoft account, but because you can't even play that game offline, without
Yeah.
making one. But the thing about consoles, like, I want to say, I mean, PS3 and Xbox 360 for the most part, it's not until like towards the later half of the generation, towards the end, where you might have to download some patches because some games are just, you know, that's when you started seeing the whole day one patch thing, maybe.
Yeah,
But
because like early that
yeah,
gen, like the patches were just to like fix bugs that would crop up here and there. Games weren't like consistently broken on day one like they are these days.
yeah, you didn't have an Assassin's Creed Unity usually as the norm in for the PS3 and the Xbox 360, and well, I'm sure that's kind of you know I'm sure it's a little bit blown up a little bit for the PS4 and the Xbox One. Once you start getting into the later parts of the generation, it's like your disc is basically just an unlock key.
Yeah.
Um, like I think there was like a thing with either Modern Warfare 2019 or Modern Warfare
The
5.
remake.
Yeah, in Modern Warfare 2, 2021, whenever it
Yeah.
came out, where I think the PS5, it was like you just put it in, it's literally just like downloads the game. Like it's just an unlock key. And this whole thing of like downloading, like having to like download stuff and maintain stuff, to me, it's you're at this point, a console is basically just kind of like a lockdown computer.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to do all this configuration. I mean, you mentioned before, you have to like manage like your storage space because um
Yeah, especially like so I have a Xbox Series X and I
yeah,
tend to forget that I have one because that's how often I use it.
yeah,
Um, and it's all they've only ever had it in a 1 terabyte configuration. A 2 terabyte one is coming out soon for 600, which is, I would say just as stupid as the PS5 Pro, but no one really got mad about that. I think
yeah.
because no one cares about
No one
about the
cares about the
Series X.
Xbox refrigerator.
Yeah, Microsoft doesn't even care. And like I have an external hard drive on it, but I constantly have to shuffle games around because your only option to expand the storage is their proprietary SSD, expansion cards.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of almost like memory cards, but it's not just storing your save files. It's storing
Yeah,
games, which is crazy to
whole
think.
bunch
Like,
of gig games.
it's crazy. I remember, like, in high school, there was one guy who was like a big like Xbox. He was like sucking their dick a lot, where he was like, you would talk down to Sony and be like, "Oh, you have to worry about like memory cards," and it's like, well, now it's come full circle.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, the whole thing about consoles is that for the most part, it was just plug and play. I mean, sure, once you get like PS1, the Dreamcast, and you might have to worry about like stuff like the Dream, like memory cards, and maybe some other small stuff. Um, but you don't have to worry about like is the game not going to work? I mean, if the game just doesn't has like glitches, they're not going to release a new patch. I mean, if they had to release an updated version, it would be like a separate disc. Um, I remember Mortal Kombat Gold, which is just like a weird version of MK4 with a bunch of like MK3 characters put in there. Um, they had released like an initial version that had like a bunch of glitches and stuff, like the game would like freeze up and everything. And then they
yeah,
released like a later version. You can tell it's like I think like the shade of like the fire in the background on like the game art or the disc or something was like different, and that like fixed up some bugs, but I guess there was like some new ones. That's what you would have had to do back in the day. So games had to be ready and done. You didn't have any day one patch. Um, the most you might have of something like that is maybe like an arcade where you have like arcade operators or like the developers. Like, oh, there's like an Infinite and like Killer Instinct for Cinder. You have to go to every Killer Instinct arcade and like
oh,
apply the update to where like make Cinder not as OP.
yeah,
Um, but it was a lot more difficult. And now with the internet, um, it's kind of like a double-edged sword because yeah, there's you can play games at multiplayer with other people, online, at any time,
yeah,
but that depends on if the game, for one thing, has servers that are going to be active. Two, if it has an active player base, and three, if you want to play the game at all. I mean, there's some games you might buy and you might play it once or twice, online, and then that'll be it.
Yeah. And I would say like even in the early PS4 days, things still weren't like that bad. I mean, there was an uptick in like the whole day one patches and all that stuff, but it didn't get too crazy, like how everything is right now where like all the big AAA games are like 100 plus gigs. Like none of these developers care about compression or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me how like, I mean, I get Mortal Kombat, like for example, the newest Mortal Kombat games, the last two, they are even Mortal Kombat X is like almost 80 gigs.
Yeah, and it's a
A
fighting
fighting
game.
game. like I mean, I get it. They have some cutscenes, they have a lot of voice acting, and maybe some other stuff to unlock. And Mortal Kombat in particular, you have um,
But like
X and
that's so crazy. Like freaking Metal Gear Solid 4 has maybe like 8 hours of cutscenes, and it was really like pushing the full HD 1080p thing, which a lot of early PS3 games, they were just
didn't
kind
do
of
that.
upscaling, yeah. And that game is like around like 40 gigs, I think.
I think so. I
Yeah,
think so. Um, but yeah, it's like I mean, I get they have like other Mortal Kombat compared to like most other fighting games, because a lot of them are still in the a lot of them, the most they might have is like maybe like a throwaway story mode or like some like arcade endings. They're basically just arcade games. Um, but like and I get in Mortal Kombat as like the not conquest, the crypt, and some other shenanigans with that. But like, does there need to be that much space taken up on an SSD? And I get the reason they do it is because they're like be like, well, we're trying to compete for because they're SSDs and they aren't as big as like hard drives.
yeah,
Um, we're trying. What they do is their strategy is literally to control and be like, well, if this game takes up this much space, that means they'll play the game more.
yeah.
And like,
Even though that was like contrary to like the whole advertising point, like when the PS5 and Series X were first announced, they were like, "Oh, everything's on SSD now, so there's no seek time, so games won't have to have redundant copy pasted data. So your games can be a lot smaller and everything will be so much faster." But like,
Q Mortal
game,
Kombat 12, and it's like
yeah,
140 gigs with like the current version. That's before the new update that comes out like next week.
yeah,
With adds like a whole new story mode, and
and
um,
like aside from like a few like first party Sony games, like games still kind of take a bit to load.
yeah, and I mean the thing is like even like with just a base hard drive, like on a computer that is, um, there's some games that just that would load fast enough to where it's like, yeah, the SSD might load a little bit faster, but it wouldn't be worth like you could save space by installing it on a hard drive, other than the
Yeah,
fact that maybe you don't want to have to like deal with having to deal with a hard drive on top, having to spin up anytime you want power on the computer. Um, and as opposed to like just going full SSD, which is what I do, but I realize most people are not going to have like 4 terabyte external SSDs
yeah,
because that is expensive.
yeah,
Um, that is very expensive, but it is also like it is very freeing because there's when you have something like that, you can like there's a lot of things you can do configuration wise on a computer, and that's the thing about a computer is that um you have more options compared to like a console, like in terms of like to configure things. But the
yeah,
thing is that takes a lot of time to do that. I mean, I have a bunch of mods for like KOF 15, like they're like costume mods. They're all very good. Like people like they make it to where like almost every one of the 8 slots can be like their own costume,
yeah,
and it's but that takes a lot of time to set up. Um, and a console, and that's the thing. Like it used to be like with the consoles, like they would be giving you a big experience, and it would be like, whoa, look, you fire up like Street Fighter Alpha free on Sega Saturn, and there's like all this content. Um, because they had to pack that game tight. And nowadays they just feed all that stuff in. You had Street Fighter Five coming out with like you play Street Fighter Five like when it launched, and you compare it to like now, it's like Street Fighter 5 at launch looks like a beta test.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about Dragon Ball Fighter Z. They were talking about like they made like some new patch where I guess characters now have touch of deaths. Like this is going full Ultimate Marvel versus Capcom
Oh,
free,
yeah.
and they were talking about it and they're like man, if you buy like the base game, it's like it's like a completely different game now.
Yeah.
Compared to like when you buy it like off the game and you just like put it in like offline mode, you just play like base Dragon Ball Fighter Z, and you don't have like all the like 30 something character. Like it's got to be probably not 30, but like something close to it. Like if you look at the character select screen,
Yeah.
like and like compared to how much they expanded that roster out. But like even with after adding the last DLC character, they're still like making patches and doing all this crazy stuff in spite of the fact they have Sparking Zero or Budokai Tenkaichi 4,
Yeah.
whatever, coming out. Even though there's technically, there's the fan version, that you can
Yeah.
apply to the PS2 game.
Yeah, and I purposely like ignored Fighter Z because I was hyped for it, but I purposely like didn't buy it because I knew there was just going to be waves and waves and waves of DLC characters and stuff. And I said to myself like I'll just buy it whenever it comes out in the release, Ultimate EX version, whatever.
Yeah.
Which that never happened, but like I is to the point now where even if everything was on sale, like I don't even know if I would notice because it's been so long and I just don't care anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and like it's crazy because like, funnily enough, I mean, I've been dunking on NRS, but like they actually do that even like today with like MK12, where they'll be like, hey, buy this and you get like all the season 1 DLC. Um, I don't know if they do it with MK12, but I think you can get. But I know like the previous games, you could buy like a physical copy that has like all the DLC like once it's all out. Um, and they've been like very good about that. Like that is like one of the things I'm glad they did for like the PS3 and 360. Well, yeah, I think the 360 version as well of MK9, where you can buy the complete edition because you can't even buy the DLC anymore if you just have like the base game. Um, even on like the PS3 store because rip the 360 marketplace.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, if you really feel like fighting with the PS3 store nowadays, which I'm impressed is still up.
The last time I checked it out was maybe like 2 years ago, and like you can't even browse it without it crashing on you. Like so terribly optimized, and like they don't like manage it at all.
and that's the thing too. Like going back to like old stuff, like this PS5 Pro is $700. Now, the most expensive Sony system that it was like a mainstream thing because I don't know how much like that weird PS2 like PSX DVR thing costed.
Yeah,
Not that it matters. It was like fragile and it like apparently broke
yeah.
down a lot. Um,
Not that most people were even aware of that, anyways.
well, yeah, 'cause, I mean it was only in Japan and like
Yeah,
I think Australia or something. Anyway, like $700, and you look at like the PS3 and it when it released, and the whole like $599 meme.
yeah,
Uh, but it's crazy because like I don't know if I ever showed you. I'm sure you seen. I see. I should sent you shared with you a picture. Privately. About like my setup because I have like a whole retro setup and everything.
yeah.
Um,
Of the fat PS3.
yeah, and that thing you don't need a vertical stand or anything. You can literally
Yeah,
just plop it. You want to put it on the hard drive, and of course, but you turn that thing around, you got a vertical system, which was a
yeah,
lifesaver because that thing was getting a little tight if you do it like
yeah.
horizontal. Um, but
Even
yeah,
even
that's
my PS3 Slim, like it's still a big enough chunker. You can just like slap it down vertically or horizontally, and it'll be pretty stable.
yeah. But what I was trying to get at was like $599, and like the first two versions of the PS3, because there are PS3 like fat PS3s afterwards that they they support PS2, but it's like a weird internal PS2 emulator. You have to
Yeah,
like look up a guide if you're ever wanting to get like play like all of your PS1 for PS3 games in one package to like make sure you're buying the right one because I made that mistake and I didn't do my research. But $599, and if you maintain that thing, you have like one of the greatest systems ever made.
Yeah.
Like not even just like the PS1, PS3. I mean, you have like RetroArch, and I know you're not the biggest fan of RetroArch,
Yeah.
but I think that RetroArch got to start on the PS3. I think so, anyways. I don't remember. I don't.
That would explain RetroArch's interface.
Well, yeah,
And
because I think that was like the cross media bar was like the initial like setup.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, that was like you can play like Super Nintendo, NES, and I don't think N64, but like you can play like a lot of like the 16-bit systems that are like relatively easy to emulate. And nowadays, yes, you can just play it on a computer. You can play Beast, BSCNES, or Heigen if you really want to get like the closest thing to accuracy on a computer and cook your CPU to death playing Super Metroid or something.
yeah,
Uh, but I
yeah. It was a really great console, and I'd say it still is for like any kind of retro enthusiast. I mean, aside
yeah
from just having PS1, 2, 3, it's kind of the best of both worlds in that it looks great on HDTV with HDMI, and you still have the old AV port if you want to hook it up to a CRT, and it's still it outputs pretty well on those with lower resolutions. And then if you hack it, if you mod it, then you could run even like PSP games on there, because I remember there were plans to like actually let you buy and download PSP games on the PS3, but
yeah
for whatever reason they just never got around to that or ever went through with it.
Yeah, well, I think there was like it was like some weird like internal like not like an emulator, but like something
Yeah,
where it would like upscale the PSP games. I'm
yeah,
assuming they used that when they ported the PSP God of War games to the PS3.
yeah,
Um, but that's like that's a one of a kind system like that, and like the Wii U, I would say
yeah.
are like two of the best consoles you can get. Like if you want like the best like consoles for like legacy, get those two because and the thing is like ideally what I would like is if Sony was like re-release the PS3, um, well, release like a small version of the PS3, and then like you
I would
know
have to assume they're still making like PS3 hardware, because the only way to
because of
play
PlayStation Now.
yeah, because like that has to be like upkept, and if anything breaks down, there's still a demand. I don't know what the demand is for how many people use the service and stuff, but I assume they have to have like a certain amount allocated to running those PS3 games. So which means they're probably still you know bust out some cell processors and whatnot.
Yeah, from like the few like research facilities that thing was used for, because
Yeah,
yeah, that's how wild that CPU inside this PS3 was. They were it wasn't just for PS3 games. Um, but yeah, it's crazy how like how much more impressive those systems are. I mean, and yes, unfortunately, there's also the elephant in the room with like the yellow light of death and the red ring of death, for like the 360 and the PS3. Um, unfortunately, you do have to those. That's why I say you do have to maintain these systems. You have to like
yeah,
get rid of the old paste, and even that might not necessarily be enough. And there's some other like uh elephants in the room where the battery on the inside, if that dies and you haven't synced up with the PS3 servers, like if let's say they die and the PS3 servers are down, you put in a new one. Anything digital does not work on the PS3 itself.
it's
Like
another win for piracy there, hacking your console.
yeah, but the thing is, like I don't think the homebrew community has like solved that yet,
Oh, really?
as
Okay.
far as I know. Anyways, I'm not. Granted, I'm not on certain forums that you and I are familiar with that
Yeah.
um I can post on to maybe be like, so is this like still working, or or is it someone figured this out yet? Um, but thankfully, that is a thing for like That's one of the benefits of emulation. Like, and I will say, yes, RPCS free is not an easy emulator to run or set up.
Yep, I would
If,
know.
if unless you've already like done some stuff with the PS3, it can be kind of brutal. You're gonna run into like a lot more errors compared to even like the PS2 and Dolphin emulators, which is when I would say, and that's the thing too, like about consoles versus emulation, because like a lot of people default to like, oh, emulation's like this great, perfect solution. It's like, I guess it is if you're willing to stay within certain parameters. Like if you're not doing any like widescreen hacks or cheat codes
Yeah,
or HD textures that packs that may or may not be finished, or you might have to subscribe to someone's Patreon or something to get access to, which is totally not going to get attacked by the Nintendo ninjas.
I'd say for any handheld before the DS, emulation is more than fine.
Yeah,
For most people, and then anything before PS1, and when we're talking home consoles, you're not gonna have any trouble on any old computer with that either.
yeah. Even like even N64, but my perspective of N64 emulation back in the day, it's like Project 64. And I know there was like some weird like issues, because I know that if you play like Smash 64, like if you do like projectiles, it wouldn't like the way it would like render it, it wouldn't like look right.
Yeah,
Um, but a lot of people like obsessed over that, like for the for like Raspberry Pis and stuff. And I'm like, I know it wasn't perfect back then, but I've been
yeah,
able to like emulate that stuff since like 2004.
yeah.
Um, but
But yeah, going back to like the whole PC thing, because the argument, especially on Twitter, the argument is being made that, oh, uh, you know, building an equivalent PC would actually cost you like more than the PS5, which like building is one thing, but I think there are certain companies that make pretty decent pre-builts, whether it's a desktop or if you just get a gaming laptop, which I know there's a stigma around those, but
yeah,
I'd say within the past few years, gaming laptops have gotten better. Like I have a gaming laptop from 2020, and I paid $420 for it, and it's still
wow. Was
yeah.
was the sales tax like $69,
No, thankfully it wasn't that much.
or was it and then it like it adds up, and then you have like fees that add up to like 666 or something.
I should
Um,
go back and check, but no. And yeah, and that's it's still trucking along pretty well. The fans get really loud, but it's not like overheating or anything. Like it runs cooler than my MacBook. You know, because if you want to talk about laptops overheating, MacBooks, when they used Intel chips, those were like the hottest
oof.
things ever. Like people complain about gaming laptops, but I'm telling you, gaming laptops do not get anywhere near as hot as Intel MacBooks.
Yeah, if you're ever like if when because we're getting to like the winter season, if you're ever getting cold, um get yourself like a gaming laptop, and get yourself, if you have a car with heated seats, you know, you're like, just play the games on your laptop, and just sit that down. You'll be warm. That
Yeah.
you'll get some additional warmth. Um,
And hey, if your stove stops working, buy an old Intel MacBook.
yeah,
Throw
but
some eggs on there.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, people will be like, oh yeah, PC is like building equivalent PC, especially in the last 4 years, is like gotten like way more expensive, and it's like, well,
And
It's mostly video cards.
yeah,
That's
and
really what it
I
is.
would say building is definitely more expensive, but like I said, the price of like gaming laptops and pre-builts, they haven't gone up that much. You're not going to get a deal like I did, a 420 deal. You're not going to see that again.
Yeah.
But, you'll still see some pretty nice deals around. And I would argue you can get an equivalent system for less than 700, and then not only do you have that, but you can upgrade it depending on what you get. You can upgrade storage. Um, you have you know you can use external hard drives or whatever. You're not limited to only putting games on the SSD. You can put games on whatever you want, and
Yeah.
that's
Flash
another
drives,
stupid thing.
SD
Like
card. Yeah.
Like when the Ratchet and Clank for PS5, when they first showed that off, they're like, "Oh, this is only possible on the PS5 because of our
Yeah,
SSD."
I
So much,
remember that.
so what's going on? And then they release the PC port, and they say you can run it off a hard drive. So that's from Sony. That's from Sony's
Yeah,
own mouth. So,
yeah, it's all about the illusion. But I do want to say, like, I mean, if someone does want to go like the building their own computer route, and you're like, hey, maybe I'll just wait for video card prices to maybe go down. I'm well, who knows? Who
yeah,
knows how things are going to turn out in like in these crazy times. Um, but I mean, you can get like a AMD Ryzen. I would say only the Ryzen CPUs or APUs is
yeah.
what they are called. Um, because like
I
I
wouldn't
have
buy
a
Intel right now.
what's that?
I wouldn't buy Intel right now with the whole
Oh
13,
yeah, because
13 gen
things are
controversy.
overheating and Intel's giving the finger to their paying customers.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but yeah, I built a CPU, a CPU. I told you, yeah, I built a CPU in my backyard, guys. Um, uh,
Better than Intel.
yeah, uh, but no, I built a PC like a console-wise computer using a Ryzen 8700 G. Yeah, I think it's 8700 G or something like that. Anyways, um, I have like it's not like the Steam Deck. It's not Steam OS. It's a bad it's like one of those variants, but it's like as opposed to it being based off of Arch, it's based off of Fedora. People aren't in the Linux community. Just you have to do your own research on that. But anyways, I was able to play like Mortal Kombat X at like I don't know if it was like max settings, but it was like close to it. And that I mean, yeah, that's an old game from 2015, but um, my point is you're not going to be. It's not like you're not going to be able to play anything.
Well,
Um,
that's fair because for the PS5 Pro presentation, they were showing off PS4 games. So,
well, yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. Like they were just showing off, like Last of
like
Us Two.
guys, yeah, Last of Us, it runs at 60 FPS now.
Even though I'm pretty sure it
Okay.
does that on computer.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, if you just build yourself like an APU, and let's say you're not doing a small form factor, you're holding out, or maybe you're using an old video card, you know, that APU, or maybe you don't even have a video card, that APU will should carry you through.
yeah,
And there's, like I said, on computer, there's plenty of games. You think about like there's not even just games. I mean, because I mean, obviously this is gaming, but like any pastime you want to do, um,
Discord
there's
even like you have
like
social stuff like Discord and any
yeah, I
other app
mean,
you want to use. Like,
yeah,
didn't Sony buy Discord a couple years ago and like you still can't like connect, you still can't like cross chat from like Discord to PS chat. That's pretty
I
stupid.
wouldn't. I would not know because I don't have. I did have a PS4, but I traded in for like a Switch with like a little bit more of a battery life. But when
Yeah.
that thing came out, um,
Yeah,
but
because like a bunch of my friends still play on PS all the time, and I'm like, and they always want to talk to me, and I'm like, guys, get on freaking Discord, because I don't want to be on my phone all the time, because I always have to use the PlayStation app on my phone just to talk to them, which means like if I'm playing something else, I can't use headphones.
oh really? So it's kind of like the Nintendo Switch app, from my understanding,
Yeah,
anyways.
yeah, and like Sony freaking bought Discord, so like let the like I know there's like some kind of Discord integration on the PS5, but like like go all the way. Like let me chat from Discord on my PC with my PlayStation friends. Like I don't understand.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's not. You don't need the latest and greatest to play everything. Nowadays you can go
Yeah,
on eBay and get a lot of stuff. A lot of the games are remastering, like Demon Souls, or remaking,
yeah. Like you're
or
gonna
and
spend $700 for like a remaster of a remaster. You know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I understand that that's not every game on these current systems, but it seems like they're just it's like I mean I make fun of like back Maximilian dude to get sometimes because he's like they're re-releasing Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and you know it was kind of surprising to see that come back because
Yeah.
there were, but even he with the PS5 Pro, he was like, even he was like, this is I can't. It's like hell no, hell no. He was like you cannot go full hype man on this.
Yeah, I was surprised, like the usual suspects you would expect to shill for that kind of thing didn't really like. Even they were like, "Oh, hold up, 700, that's a lot of money." But what I wanted to get into with the PS5 Pro topic is one creator slash creators that did shill for the PS5 Pro. As a matter, I would go as far to say as they're sweeping up for Sony right now. Is Digital Foundry. They've been trending on Twitter like all day because one of their guys was
Really?
like, "Oh yeah, the the graphics card or graphics chip or whatever in the PS5 Pro is will give you equivalent performance to RTX
Oh yeah,
4070."
4070. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, is a Zen 2 processor gonna get the most out of a 4070? Like, assuming this guy, is talking out of his ass, and they don't have a PS5 Pro yet. They're just going off what everyone else knows. They know as much as we do about the specs and everything else. And they're doing all this stuff. Another one of the guys, um, he like I think the day it went up, he was like, he posted screenshots from like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth
Yeah.
running on the PS5 Pro, and he's like, "Oh my god, the image quality on regular PS5 was so terrible. I can finally play this game on the PS5 Pro." And he posted a screenshot of it, and it looked it's exactly the same.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, and that's the other thing too. Like, there comes a certain point with like games that are trying to go for like realism or full realism that the big budget Final Fantasy products tend to go for nowadays, where it's getting to a point of like diminishing returns. Where yes, like Mortal Kombat 12 looks better than MK11, which was already pretty impressive. Like especially considering that game, MK11 was running on like admittedly like heavily modified Unreal Engine free. Um, in that game already like the character faces look like thinking, man, you look at like Shang Tsung, who's like you got the movie actor, and some other guys in like a later DLC pack
Yeah,
that played the characters in the first like MK movie, and you know that's like a PS4 game. And the faces are already looking like pretty as good as they do.
yeah.
Um,
And like with Final Fantasy VII Remake, especially, like they put so much effort into like making all this stuff look real, but like when you travel, like don't get me wrong, I had fun with that game. Like
yeah.
I know a lot of people didn't like it. I defended that game for quite a bit, but like it's really like it's a fun game, but that's as far as I'll go now. Cause like you running through the environments and like you can't interact with anything. Like there's some crates you can smash open every now and then, but like you have all these detailed like textures and all this super detailed foliage and all this stuff, and you're playing this cloud, you're swinging your sword around, and like
There's
nothing's
particle effects
connecting.
all over the place.
Yeah, particle effects, but nothing's connecting. You can't. There's not even like a jump button. You can't. You know, you can't like hop on top of something unless the game wants you to. Then when it's a context specific thing, and you can do
Yeah.
it. But like it's the thing people complained about in Final Fantasy 13, where they called the whole game a hallway.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
like just
Final
linear.
Fantasy 7 Remake, it's not that bad, but it's still just like a very pretty looking hallway. Like you're not interacting with as much stuff as you would expect to for like a modern high budget RPG. And
Yeah.
then the other thing is they're taking so long with it because so much budget and everything is going into it.
Yeah,
Part
because
one
it's
is
like
on
they
PS
split it into three parts. Yeah.
Yeah, so think about it. Part one is on PS4, part two is on PS5, and like part three, I bet money is going to be on PS6. There's no way that's coming out before the PS6 does.
And what are they going to do once they finally finish it? And like, are they going to release like Final Fantasy VII complete, or no, they're gonna be like part 4. We're gonna adapt Advent Children and all the other stuff that like takes place after Final Fantasy VII. Like,
Oh yeah,
they're putting
and all the other spin-offs like Dirge for Cerberus
yeah, yeah,
and they already remade Crisis Core. Well, remastered, sort of. I'd
like
call it a remake because
remastake or whatever.
yeah, because they
Eh,
didn't change too much, but all the graphics are redone. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
so like the whole thing is going to be like 10 discs once it's done.
wow. I don't even think like Riven on PS1 is like that's no, no, no. You want to know what the most disc on a for a console game is? Phantasmagoria on Saturn.
Oh really?
That's that has the very small amount of 8 discs,
Jeez.
but it's like a point and click. That's like a point and click like PC
So
game.
there's probably like tons of audio and FMVs and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it makes a little bit more sense, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, as far as like the hallway thing in Final Fantasy, I mean, I feel like that's always been the case for a lot of the Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, like even because I didn't play 10 when it came out. I played it. I played the remaster when it came out on PS4 much later,
Yeah,
and I was like, hey, this is still kind of pretty linear. I don't know why do people like this so much more than 13?
yeah.
But but the one thing I'll give 10 and I'll give 7 remake is that the combat is actually good. Like people for some reason I've seen people like recently defend the combat in 13, but the combat in 13 is like the most automated thing I've played in any JRPG ever. Like to call it calling it turn based is like is generous.
I
It
mean,
feels more like a mobile game that like plays itself.
I mean, I've seen some footage of it, but I've never played it. I just know, like back in the day, that when that game came out, it was like no one liked it. It was weird. Like when that is in the 7th gen, it felt like a lot of stuff from Japan was like getting dunked on a lot.
Yeah,
Um, like
because they a lot of for some reason during that generation they just decided, oh, we're gonna chase Western trends, and they did it in like the weirdest ways possible. Like, oh, people like how Call of Duty is linear, so we'll make our JRPG linear.
yeah,
Like, okay,
yeah.
I-
We'll go and we'll release a front mission game that's a third person shooter, even though Armored Core exists. Um, we'll go and reboot Devil May Cry because reasons, and
yeah.
because Inafune has some weird hard on for the West. Um,
And then
I
I think one of the reasons they got dunked on during that generation is for whatever reason, like every Japanese developer went hardcore on like the tutorials. Like every single game treated you like a retarded baby. And like especially like on the Wii, like a lot of Wii games, like they would have like such like kind of patronizing tutorial intro levels. I think like Mario
right.
Galaxy 2 even
Well,
came with a DVD that teaches you how to play the game. Like,
it's for your parents. It's not for you,
yeah,
because that's a lot of people who bought it, but that like by that point, no one cared, because like Galaxy 2 was like '09 or 2010, I think.
yeah,
Like one of the last game. I mean, it was like one of the last few like big games other than like Xenoblade Chronicles, which people had to petition for.
yeah.
Um, uh, but yeah, I mean the PS5 Pro, I don't. It's it would be one thing if these were games that were like. It'd be one thing
If there were games.
if there were games and if they were exclusive, like actually exclusive, and not this stupid weird timed exclusive thing. But at the
Yeah.
same time, for publishers, they're looking for a big payday, and
And with the budgets games have nowadays, like you need like if you're gonna put out a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you need a PC port. And I don't know why they haven't done the PC port yet because they said sales haven't met their expectations.
yeah, I think even like Final Fantasy 16 like didn't do as well as they were hoping, and
Yeah.
that was the one where they just said, screw it, we're not even gonna we're just gonna dispense with the illusion. This game's a character action game now.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I heard it was like a kind of a fun character action game. Like I remember there was like one guy, I've shared some of his videos with you before, but like he's like a big shmup guy. You
Yeah.
probably know who I'm talking about. like he did a review and he was like wow, this is actually like I can actually play this, enjoy a Final Fantasy for once. Um,
Yeah,
because he's
because
not a
it's
big fan of
not Final
RPGs.
Fantasy.
Yeah,
Going back to the whole Western trend thing, it feels like we're about to enter that cycle again because 16 feels like it's trying to appeal hardcore to Westerners. Like it's this kind of medieval type stuff.
yeah,
All the characters are like super, like the designs for characters aren't as crazy as your typical JRPG, and everyone's wearing armor.
yeah.
All the women are covered up.
Well, aren't they, my impression, because I never played the game, was that they were trying to go for like a darker tone, from what I understand. And I mean, there are some
Yeah,
like older Final
I,
Fantasies, like the
I heard the
older ones, like before. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Is like Final Fantasy, like before Final Fantasy 7, like they weren't going so hard on like the techno stuff until you like get to like the final bosses or like the last areas, where you're fighting like some uh some like Lovecraftian thing from space as the final boss. Um, so I thought maybe that's what they were kind of trying to invoke. Like, okay, we haven't done this in like a while. Um, but yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I heard there was more like it's the story has like some more like mature stuff, like the not like I mean darker in more of a Western sense, I guess, where there's more violence, there's more adult things, like the kind of thing you would expect from an R-rated movie, not like your usual M-rated game.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, I mean, I guess if that's what they're going for, but at the same time, it's like you said, like some of those wars are like so brutal. I mean, but yeah, you have women covered up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
you're gonna go all the way in this one adult direction, but you're afraid of being, seen as like, oh, sexualizing women, even though games rated M, like, can't do that, but we can.
yeah, and then you have like Xenogears, which I mentioned I would like to do like a let's play of some kind. At some other point. Uh, you know, and it's not like it's like showing anything that would get it. The game was rated T in 1998, and yet you have some scenes where um certain characters are granted it's just like the regular pixel art sprite for like the world, so it's not like you can see anything like detailed,
Yeah.
but it's not like something that would be like shut it down, censor this, if there was a remake the game, that's what would happen.
Yeah.
Like even like Saga Free, I told you I watched like the cutscenes for that game. Like even that game, like weirdly, like in Xenosaga 1 as like a notorious case, but even Xenosaga Free, there's like a lot of weird censorship. Like not even just like I mean, there's like one scene towards the end where I don't want to say too much, but they characters like just looks like she's made of bloom. That's like their
Oh,
censorship.
yeah.
But then there's like another scene where like a bunch of characters in the ship that you're like a part of. It's kind of like the airship of the game, but there's no really there's no like world map or world galaxy, I guess, in Xenosaga to traverse, unfortunately, because that's how they made the game.
Yeah.
Uh, but there's like one scene where like everyone's like gunned down. It kind of reminds me almost like End of Evangelion when you have the
Oh,
Japan
yeah.
Defense Force
Everyone
gunning
dies.
down, yeah, people.
Yeah.
But in the US version, there's like no blood,
Oh,
and it's like that would have been a lot. Like there's a scene where the characters are like reacting, and that would have been a lot more intense if you saw everyone like all bloody and everything.
yeah.
So
And speaking of censorship, that's another reason it's like if you like Japanese games, why on earth would you buy it? Why would you drop $700 on a Sony console? Like they're the reason like Japanese games are getting censored now because ever since 2018, HQ PlayStation HQ moved from Japan over to California,
yeah,
and they did as companies do in California. And not only are they censoring Japanese developers, they shut down a lot of their own Japanese developers. Like the team that made Astrobot, I think, is like probably the only Japanese team they have left. Like they shut down the main Japan studio, and you know, if you're supporting Sony still, you're contributing to that, and you're telling them, that's okay. Here's $700.
it's not even just Sony. Like it's other parties that have their
Yeah,
fingers in just about every company out there. I think the only company that might not be affected, as far as I know, I just remember seeing like a headline about from a video from Side School. I didn't watch it yet, but about the guys who made Lollipop Chainsaw.
yeah,
They're porting that, and apparently, pretty much every costume is going to make it into the game, other than like the ones that are like from like anime there or series or brands that aren't really popular anymore, like High School of the Dead. You
yeah.
know, um,
And
so
I did see actually, I meant to send it to you, but I forgot. On Twitter last night, someone did like a little comparison where the physics, if you know what I mean, were
yeah,
a little
yeah,
off in the remaster, and the director of the game actually like retweeted somebody else who was defending it, saying that it was because of the different engine they were using. And then I think after that he tweeted it actually is because of the different engine, and they plan to go back in and try and fix it and make everything like one to one. Which, if true, that's very good to see.
yeah. I mean, you would think though that there would be something again. It kind of goes back to the whole like day one patch thing where you think they would have like fixed that up beforehand. I mean, I get release dates are release dates, and you don't want to have like delays. Um, but when the majority of the games that are coming out are stuff that you can get for cheaper on like let's say you want to be legit, you want to you don't want to you don't want to soil your hands with the high seas. You can
Yeah.
still get a lot of these games. I as far as I know, anyways. Maybe not right now. I know like Adam Corlick did the video about the seventh gen games are getting like and stuff is getting expensive again,
Yeah.
or for the first time. Um, you can still get that stuff like cheaper on like PS3 and Xbox 360.
Yeah.
Um, I would think for the most part.
And
Like
then if you go with the Pro and you don't buy a disk drive, you're going to be going all digital. And digital on PC can be very cheap, but digital on console is rarely cheap. Like you're going to be paying full price most of the time, and if you do get a sale, it's going to be like 20, 30% off most of the time.
yeah, there's no Steam summer or winter sales or random like deals on like on PC.
Yeah. On PS5, you mean?
Yeah, on PS5, probably Xbox. Definitely not on Switch as often. Or if it
Oh
is
yeah.
something on Switch, it's just going to be like something you could get on Steam anyways.
Yeah.
Um,
But if we're
I
talking
was
about Nintendo's own games, you're not seeing more than 30% off. And that's if you're lucky.
yeah, maybe if the Switch is like they're phasing things out, but even
Yeah.
then, I mean, depending on what
Yeah.
we're hearing about the Switch 2 and possible backwards compatibility, it might be they might who knows? We'll see because Nintendo they tend to do their own thing, but at
Yeah.
the same time, we don't know what Furukawa and what he's going to do because it's it's been because he's like the second CEO ever since Iwata unfortunately departed from us in 2015
Yeah.
or
But like
2016.
like going back to the PS4, like when I had my I mean I still have my PS4, but I just don't play it. But when I was really into the PS4, I bought, I'd say 90% of my games were physical, and there were always tons of sales. Like plenty of times I would get like big AAA games for like $20. Sometimes I would get Sony's own games on sale for like $15. I think I like Gran Turismo Sport. I found that a brand new copy for $10 one time.
Oh wow,
Yeah, and you're never gonna see that on their own PlayStation Store, And then
yeah,
with Switch, like a lot of people complain about the first party stuff, as we just mentioned. But if you buy physical and you're smart and you're checking around, like I got Tears of the Kingdom for $30 less than a year after it came out. So
okay.
yeah,
That was like with the like CIB or
yeah, brand new. Uh, I got it from QVC of all places.
QBC. Okay.
That's they're like one of those home shopping networks, but they have their own website, and they have tons of like sales on physical Switch games all the times, and they'll have like first party Switch games for like $30.
Wait, is this one of those things like that like Andre the Giant used back in the day to order stuff?
I have no idea, but
Like
I know QVC, like they used to be like the home shopping network channel
yeah,
where they have like the person showing off something like every half an hour.
yeah. Well,
They
that is
probably
it's
they
probably
probably
something
still have that,
similar
but
because
yeah,
like I remember reading like Andre the Giant because it was like so big, um, and trying to get out was like kind of weird for him. He would
yeah.
like actually before he was the OG Amazon shopper. He would literally just like phone things and he would like that's how he would get his stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
just a,
so
just a random factoid.
they have a website. I actually got the PlayStation VR for like $90 from them.
Oh wow. I
Yeah, the
think that
first PSVR.
I think you said you didn't last very long with that, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I can only really play the games where you're like stationary, which there aren't a ton of those. So
That's always been the weird thing with VR. Like, how are you supposed to like you either like actually walk or you like teleport all over the place?
yeah, so like the game, a lot of the games that use the what's it called, the PlayStation Move controller.
Yeah, basically.
Um, yeah, with those, like you kind of teleport around on. Um, but then a lot of them you just use the regular DualShock and you can just move around. And then I think like most like VR games now, because most VR headsets have like analog sticks on them for their controllers now, so
Yeah.
that teleporting thing isn't really like a thing anymore. But I know for like Skyrim and Doom, that's like how you had to get around on PSVRs. You had to teleport around.
Well, I mean, with Doom, you got to be moving really fast, and unless you have some like a good tolerance, or I guess it's like a weird motion sickness thing that like causes people
Yeah,
like get sick.
yeah,
You're
because I
you're
played. Uh, was it Drive Club? Is that like the not Gran Turismo that they had at launch for PS4? I think it was Drive Club or
I don't
something.
really remember.
Yeah, so that was one.
Racing car games are a dime a dozen. It feels like.
Yeah, that was one of the demos that came with the PSVR, and I like shit you not, like 7 seconds into playing that, I wanted to vomit.
If you think those are bad, you should have tried one of these days. You got to try like I've never tried it myself, but I remember on Reddit they made like a VR thing for I think this was when the Vive was like the VR headset to use
Yeah,
for F-Zero GX first person.
yeah, yeah. So I remember seeing that.
Yeah, just imagine playing that and flying all over the place and getting knocked around. You know,
That might actually kill me.
yeah. But yeah, I mean the PS5 Pro. I mean $700. I mean you got to be someone like Mystic, uh, like a big Sony pony to
Yeah,
like
I remember watching
go all
him
in.
in like the late PS3 days, and that was actually back when you can watch like a Sony fanboy because they actually had things to fanboy about. Every now
Yeah,
and then, one of his videos will pop up, and I'll be like, "Oh, PS5 Pro just announced. Oh yeah, this is happening." And like, I don't know how you could get excited about about these things still. Like, there's
hey, when your paycheck's dependent on it, you gotta put on the suit. You gotta tighten up that tie. You
uh,
know,
at that
and
point, you would look in the mirror and be like, "All right, I think it's time to branch out my content."
I mean, hey, I will admit he did show off some cool stuff like the printer video, and he has like some weird, like he had some not weird, cool documentaries
Yeah,
about like I think they're mostly the PS3 stuff, but
yeah. I do like his like going back to check in on like PS3 online videos or like when
oh
he
yeah,
does
I
like
remember that.
the eBay hauls. Those can be
Yeah,
fun.
yep.
But yeah, did you ever watch Digital Foundry at any point in time?
I've watched them like so I would say the few times I've watched them are maybe back in the 2010s, back when people started like really getting all up in arms about like the PS4 and the Xbox One, like, oh, this one it runs the game at this resolution or this frame rate, and it's like, that was kind of part of that, and all the exclusives, like Xbox playing all their exclusives on computer was
Yeah.
kind of when I sort of checked out of the console race, and also when um some other personal stuff with a certain friend of mine that I mentioned to you um
Yeah.
really that's kind of when I just said I don't care about this console war thing anymore. Yes, Sony has some stuff, you know, they're already making, they made that one video of Bloodborne being played at not quite full speed, but I'm sure the emulators will get better, or
Yeah.
compatibility layers, whatever they end up figuring out. There's like, I've shared with you that Xbox One compatibility layer thing. There's actually apparently like
Yeah.
7 or 8 of them
Oh,
uh,
okay.
that they posted about like later on r/emulation. Um, so, but to go back to Digital Foundry, I don't. I watched some of it. I think the last thing I watched of them was like the CRT one where they're playing like Control at like
Oh
a low
yeah.
resolution. Um, I
Yeah.
did.
I would say like when you said the early 2010s, I'd say that was like a good time to watch them because that's back when they were just like factual information. What's the frame rate? What's the resolution? How does it
Yeah,
run?
yeah, early to
And
mid
then
2010s. Yeah,
yeah, and then like slowly they started getting more like editorializing, like injecting their own opinions and having these like fancy preambles to each video. Like I don't know if they were always owned by Eurogamer or if they were bought up by Eurogamer, but they are part of Eurogamer now, so they're another one of those game journalist outfits that hate gamers. So
yeah.
they gotta
I remember like looking at their PS5 Pro video. It's like a podcast, like an
yeah
hour long podcast. I'm like
yeah
thinking,
they do podcasts now. Like what the
like
hell?
this isn't like to do with the PS5 Pro, admittedly, but like it's weird how like YouTube now has so many videos where it's just hours of content. Like I remember seeing like a video on like Doom that was like the original Doom games that's like 5 or 6 hours long by, I don't even remember the guy's name. He had like glasses on, kind of like uh dirty blonde hair, I think. Um Maybe you might know him. I don't, there's so many creators. It's like, I mean, there's some like people who do like long form content that's, I would say, is fine, or I
Yeah,
even like, something I could see myself like, while I'm like bored at work, playing over my, playing over through my phone basically. Um, but it's not, whenever people like, I don't want every video to be like hours and hours long. Like
yeah,
I think about like classic Game Room, and his videos were like not even 10 minutes.
yeah. Like I used to like back when he was at his peak. I used to like not care for his stuff because like I was like, oh, how could you review a freaking game in 5 minutes? But now it's like, you know what? I'll take that over like 2 hours of like some guy on Digital Foundry talking, giving his opinion when that's not what people originally came to Digital Foundry for.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I mean,
you're starting like they'll have a video like whatever game technical breakdown, and they'll start with like some game journalist type preamble opening like they're doing some kind of a video essay or something,
yeah,
and it's like I don't come to you for your opinion on the game. I clicked on Digital Foundry because I want to know how does it run on the stuff I have, how does it run on the stuff I don't have. Should I even pick up this game based on it, whether it's buggy or not. Like I don't need to hear like you're supposed to be the factual, unbiased, like neutral party.
yeah. Just
You're
the
supposed to
numbers,
do your
please.
job. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, yeah, that's like Digital Foundry. But I'm just like, I mean, like some of these video essays, like about like Metal Gear Solid, like I know if, in particular like Max Derrett. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he has like 5 or 6 or 7 like videos on Metal Gear Solid, and I didn't even like watch them. What I did was I was playing Lost Judgment, and because of the way the game handles like enemy spawns, and like throughout the whole game, like this is like chapter 1 or 2. What I did was I just, you know because I don't mind doing repetitive stuff, I end up just like grinding my character out while listening to like his whole series of videos.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, like at end game levels by the time I was done.
Yeah, and I had found him back when he first did his video on Metal Gear Solid 2, and it was called
Yeah.
like the most profound moment in gaming or something like that.
I think he actually did one that used to be. It was like a different title, but it was like an earlier version of that. But yeah,
Yeah, and like I remember his content was like really varied back then. Like most of his videos were about like trying to navigate life and social stuff because he has autism, and
as
you
do
know,
I.
yeah, and a few other. I think he also has like Asperger's or something like that.
And
Um,
that's the spectrum part of the spectrum I'm on. But
yeah,
autism is it's a spectrum. It's a whole thing.
yeah, and I was like, oh, cool, this guy, he does this kind of stuff, and every now and then he'll do this really intricate deep dive on like Metal Gear Solid or something, or some kind of game. But then like as time went on, like he kept like the video game stuff like kind of overtook the rest of the stuff on his content, and it felt like every other month I was seeing a new video called the most profound moment in game. Like,
Or like anime, or
yeah, it's like, all right, how many most profound moments do we have there, guy? Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you can analyze a lot of things. Like you can overanalyze a lot of things with not just games, but like performance. Like, yes, I would like every game to have a 1080p 144 hertz mode, but at the same time, I'm not like it's gotten to the point where it's like, I mean, as much as I would like that, I understand not every developer is going to do that because most developers don't develop for PC primarily. Like I mentioned, Lost Judgment. Um, the Yakuza games are mostly console games. Like whenever people think about that, they think about like
Yeah,
Sony because for the longest time, those were Sony games until they finally started, re-releasing all on like everything. Um, which is kind of confusing now because everyone has like a skewed opinion of like what it was. I mean, not that I was like a fan like ever since like 2005 because I didn't have a PS2. And my impression of Yakuza until I heard my impression of the Yakuza. I mean, we're kind of going off a trail here, and I know we got like other stuff to discuss. Um, but like my impression of Yakuza was always Japanese GTA. But then I
yeah.
heard a video by Alpha Omega Sin about oh, it was like one of the best beat 'em ups. I was like, it's a beat 'em up, because and the thing is like you know that's you would have no idea because back then you know GTA clones was like a dime a dozen because that was like the game to clone, in the PS2 era.
Yeah. And
So
yeah, so to kind of bring things back,
yeah,
so now we have like all of these digital foundry guys essentially going on, I'm gonna call it a press tour for like the PS5 Pro, even though they don't have it, even though like a full official spec sheet isn't out yet. But and they're like preemptively defending this thing from PCs, and it's like I've seen people on Twitter like whenever someone argues with one of the points, people are like, "Oh, you think you know better than Digital Foundry?" And it's like, well, yeah, a lot of people do. Like,
yeah,
have you seen like their testing? Like, I think it was maybe like when the 20 or 30 series Nvidia cards came out, or no, it was one of the AMD cards, and they were testing it, and they were stacking it up against the current Nvidia card,
yeah.
and I think it was when the AMD FSR thing like first started,
Gonna
and
be some growing pains probably.
yeah, and they were just like, oh well, the next iteration of DLSS is coming out soon, so we're not going to test FSR against it yet. And it's like, what? Like, so you're just not going to test it at all? Like, not even compared to the first DLSS? Like,
Yeah, at least have something.
yeah. It's like, so you're going to wait for the newer thing that's obviously going to be better to come out, and then you're going to test FSR. Like, okay, all right. And then, like, this one, I remember very specifically. It was their Bandicoot 4. I'll call it review because they're not tech breakdowns anymore. They're glorified reviews.
Yeah,
And I think it was John Linneman who did that one, and the way like it wasn't even a tech breakdown. He was just like commenting on the animations in the game, and at
Yeah.
one point he was like, "Oh yeah, and the animations have a very animated like quality to them." And it's like
Uh,
I would hope I would
can
hope
we
so. Like
can we get a second take on that?
it's not 1984 anymore. I would hope video
Yeah,
games have an animated kind of feel to it. Like
yeah, everything animates better than it did on PS2 because technically, I think uh uh what is it? Cortex Strikes Back, whatever the first PS2 one was technically
yeah,
Crash 4 in Japan or something.
yeah, Wrath of Cortex. I think it
Oh,
was.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It was called Crash 4 in Japan, and and then their other guy, the British guy, the old one, the one who's like saying the PS5 is a 4070. Whenever he
yeah.
talks
Oh,
about
okay.
graphics, like I don't know if you remember any of this, but whenever he talks about graphics, he likes to use the word bespoke a lot. It's like, oh, there's a
Oh,
lot of yeah, it's like there's a lot of bespoke ray tracing going on, and there's a lot of bespoke rasterization going on, and
kind of reminds me. I mean, I know back when this is going kind of touching. I don't know if this is going to end up in the recording. Is kind of touching another video we should probably get to at some point here, but back in 2016 when like Trump won, you had like all these like red tube in like content creators showing up in like the
yeah,
recommendations.
oh yeah,
Um, and I know like Red Cow Arcade, they did like a video on like what's that talking points or whatever his
um,
name was.
the one who
Um,
did the video on Bimmy,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Whatever his name, I forget, but yeah, they were like criticizing it because it's like you know, I remember like in the video thumbnail, Frankie he has like bespoke,
yeah,
and it's you know, I mean I don't know, it's weird because like I don't really obviously I don't follow those guys other than whenever they say something like really stupid, which we'll probably get to like in another video soon here. Um, but it's very it was just that's just it's like why you always got to use that adjective. There's plenty of there's a thesaurus.
yeah. And like especially like if you're talking about video games, how many things are actually bespoke? You know, like if you're using the word that much, like what are we actually talking about here?
Yeah, like like oh, it's very the animation is very animated. Well, maybe you could like say it has like a bounce and stretch. Like you're like really impressed that it's like kind of animates almost like an old like Pixar movie or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's what he wanted to say, but he also says that a lot in other videos. So he was like, "Oh, I better not say that again. Better say something different." And then
and
he,
that's what a thesaurus is for.
but instead he was like, "Oh, it's very animated. Like it has an animated quality to it." Like, okay,
Playing Guilty Gear Xrd, that crazy animation that Axel does when he wins is very animated.
yeah. I mean, if you're talking about modern platformers, like yeah, a lot of them kind of do have a Pixar look to them, especially if they have cutscenes. So
Yeah, and as far as like visuals go, I'm kind of glad that to a certain extent that those are those games can like be made now, and not everything has to be like look at all the arm hairs on this guy's uh arm, you know,
yeah,
you know, doing the same thing he does, but
yeah. And that is a lot of like digital foundry. Like, oh, look at these individual foliage and look at these individual arm hairs and look at these bespoke animated animations.
yeah.
It's like,
And
yeah, I have eyes. I can see it.
when you're actually playing the game, you're not going to actually take all that in, which is kind of why I'm like sometimes like what even is why are we even bothering with like
Yeah,
upgrades almost other than get people to buy more video card, upgrade their rigs like when Counter Strike Go finally they finally they finally got from some kind of variants like upgrade like graphical upgrades the CS 1.6 guys,
yeah,
and they finally got to Counter Strike 2. They finally counted to 2 on that series, guys. Um, all for like a graphical update and like
yeah,
some special effects that Valve was like, oh wow, this is really impressive, and other people like were like, I can do that in like Unity or Godot or whatever dev
Yeah.
tools people use nowadays, without needing to like upgrade the whole engine. You know,
And it's like if you're doing a tech breakdown, why are you padding out your video talking about stuff like animations? Like just tell me is the frame rate stable? Is the resolution stable? Does the game not have bugs? Like that's what I think a lot of people clicked on Digital Foundry videos for a long time
yeah.
because especially in the earlier days, like there would be a big difference between the PS3 and the PC version.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah. I mean, there was like they did release like Crisis 2 and 3 on PS3, but then like it's like full physical games. But I remember they did do a port of Crisis 1. Um, I never played those versions because it's like you got to play that on a computer,
yeah,
because those are like that's like the tech game, or it was the tech game. I don't think it is
yeah,
anymore. Um, Not that those games. I mean, Crisis One still looks pretty good. The few times I have played it.
yeah,
Um, and that's kind of the thing. Like the thing, I guess, to tie all this back together. I mean, because yeah, Digital Foundry, they obsess over things. I mean, the thing is, they just don't have like a mission. They have a mission statement that they were abiding by, that they broke off from, and now they're like in space, and they have like nothing to like tighten, nothing to like tighten the video pace to, like no like gravitational force to tighten it to. I guess
yeah. And like
to explain it.
even when like the PS4 Pro and the Xbone One X came out, they were still
Yeah,
like pretty on point. Like I remember their Red Dead 2 video. It was pretty good and pretty straight to the point. They were like, hey, this version runs at like 800p and this version runs at 1200p, and there's like a you know
they have like
difference in
different performance
frame
modes.
pacing, and yeah. And but like even back then they like kept adding more and more editorialization to each video, and it's like I don't come here for you to type a fancy essay that would impress your college professor. I come here to
Yeah,
get the straight facts. And like going back to like the PS5 Pro itself, like another defense I've seen is people are like, oh, it's for enthusiasts. Well, if you're an enthusiast, especially a tech enthusiast, why are you still on console? Like,
well, I
and
use
if you're an enthusiast who just wants to plug and play things, also like console isn't the bastion of that anymore. Like we mentioned earlier, you still got to
yeah,
do all this
yeah,
juggling with your data. Um, like I mentioned, how bad it sucks, how bad the storage problem is on Series X, but even on PS5, like you can't just run Ratchet and Clank off an external hard drive, even though it can run on a regular hard drive on PC.
yeah,
Like you have to have it on the SSD. Even
yeah.
though and like the the PS5, it has a USB-C port, and even if you plugged in a really fast external SSD, you still couldn't run your game off that because it just wouldn't let you. And
Well,
it's
yeah,
like
because I think the PS5 and the Xbox Series, I think the Xbox Series X, their internal SSDs are, I think they're like PCIe Gen 4.
yeah,
And that's like, even compared to like most internal SSDs on the market, they're most of those, like, I think PCIe Gen 3. Um,
yeah, at the time when they came out,
yeah,
that
back in
was the
2020 when
deal.
the PS5 was fresh and new.
Yeah, because but like I think like most NVMe's, even like ones you'd see on sale, are all like Gen 4 now. At
I
least
believe.
at least in those new egg emails I get all the time, it's usually Gen 4 ones most of the time on sale.
Yeah. I just have plenty of PCIe Gen 3s that I can fall back on if I need to like throw something in,
Yeah.
real quick, or just,
And even then, like Ratchet and Clank runs on a hard drive, so it's not like all these games are really needing that 5 gigabits per second or whatever.
yeah. Although, I mean, I will say I did play Doom 2016, and you want an SSD for that game because that game takes a
Yeah,
little bit to load up. And when you're loading up into a new level, if you die or something, I don't think it takes as long,
yeah,
as
because
it
I
naturally
I
tends to do.
I played it on PS4 first, and yeah, it's like you said, it really only takes a little while to load into the game, but After that, it's pretty snappy. And then I played it again on Series X, and that it was very snappy, but I'm sure it would be just as snappy if they let me run it off an external SSD, but they won't.
But yeah, I mean it. I mean, yeah. Wait, to go back to like one thing you said. I mean, yeah. I mean, even if you're like a tech enthusiast or someone who works with like computers all the time, I mean, sometimes you just want to sit down and play a game.
Yeah,
Even if like it's an RPG that frankly you could probably play on RetroArch with like fast forward to get through all the grinding. Um, which is still crazy to think like, whenever they re-release like Final Fantasy 8 or 9 or 7, like, oh, you can like fast forward the game and turn off like random encounters. And, even though like there's like stuff in Final Fantasy 8 where you can turn off random encounters by the game itself.
yeah,
Um, it's crazy how like all they're doing is when it comes to like the re-releases of these games, like the older stuff, like okay, maybe I don't want to, again, that person doesn't want to dip their hands into high seas. They don't want to, they don't want to pay however much Xenogears is worth.
yeah,
Even though there's I don't think there's like a modern re-release that has like all the bells and whistles that they give that game. They would give that game nowadays.
yeah,
Um, you can just do that on RetroArch. It's as crazy and complicated as RetroArch can be. With all the settings it has, that's one of the things that's not too hard to set up.
yeah. And like one of the reasons I still kind of stick by the Switch is if you are that kind of person that really just wants a plug and play simple experience. Well, if you are the kind of person that wants that experience, you probably don't care that much about graphics. And
Yeah.
well, a lot of Switch. I mean, there are Switch games where if you buy the cart, you still have to download, a couple gigs update. But for the most part, Switch games are like mostly on the cart. And if they do have an update, it's usually a small update, or you could even play the game without the update, and it'll still run pretty fine. Uh, you know, and I would say that goes for all their first party stuff. You could play all their first party stuff without having to download the update. But like, let's say you're just getting into the Switch right now. Like if you go out and you buy Smash Brothers right now, a physical copy of it, it'll
Yep.
have all the updates on the cartridge because
Oh,
Nintendo
really?
with their first party stuff, um, like I don't know how often they reprint them. They will have like updates on the cart. Like when I bought, I think it was Super Mario Maker because I bought it like a year after it came out. It had like version 3.4 on the cartridge too. Like I didn't have to download anything.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I mean, I never knew that they did that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't think any of the third parties do, but I know for their first party stuff they'll do that. So,
well,
if there is a game that had a ton of updates like Smash, if you go out and buy a physical copy right now, you'll have the complete game. You'll still have to pay for DLC if you want that because they haven't released like a all-in-one ultimate collection version, but
final, call it Super Smash Brothers Final Ultimate or
Super Smash Brothers Ultimate.
Ultimate times X2.
Yeah.
Um,
EX Tyson.
yeah, but yeah, I can't. I mean, as far as the PS5 Pro goes, I don't know what else to really say. I mean, I just think at this point, um, any whatever hardware they can come up with nowadays, it's not gonna. I mean, some of it is probably age. I'll admit, like it's not as impressive, but you know, it's a little bit easier to get impressed when you're like younger.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the other thing is they don't really have the games to impress. Like all the stuff they showed were like either remakes or remasters of like PS4 games. So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it runs at like 120 FPS now, but like, do I want to go back and play it just for that? Or
yeah. I mean, I already played Final Fantasy VII like years ago. I mean, yes, Final Fantasy VII remake and rebirth. I know have a lot of differences. It's not the exact same story. It's like a
yeah.
weird sequel. It's like a we. It's like
Well, that's
what
the
is
thing.
it's
It's
a
like
parallel universe or something.
yeah, like it's been so long since part one. Like what I told you when I first played and finished part one, I was very keen on it. I was very hyped on it. I defended it a lot despite, the criticisms I spoke about it earlier. But like it's been so long, like I don't care. Like I don't care to go out and buy a PS5 just to play part two. And when it comes out on PC, I don't know that I'm gonna care to buy it right away either. And
Yeah.
because then I'm still gonna have to wait like another 4 or 5 years for part three. And even then, like the story has strayed so much. Like, is it still Final Fantasy VII at this point? You know, like
Yeah, or is it Final Fantasy VII Part 3? Uh you cannot parallel
yeah,
rebuild a
and
Final Fantasy. You know.
yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, literally putting remake in the title and calling it remake to me, that's like false advertising. Because with the ending of part one, you realize like, it's not a remake. And then when they started showing off part two, it's like, it's really not a remake. So it's like,
Yeah, it's like the weird like ghosts or whatever,
yeah. So it's
like
like
straight
for
out of
the
like Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, so it's like for the people who have been begging for a remake for all these years, like you still haven't gotten it. You're still waiting for it, you know?
I mean, if you want a remake, what you can do is get the PC version. There's like plenty of and like download all these mods. Um, sure, it'll still be turn based, I think, but I know that it like upgrades the graphics where they're not stick figures and everything. Um, but I don't. I'm personally of the opinion at this point with a lot of games, whenever they, especially when there's like multiple versions, like Dragon Quest, for example, where it's like you have plenty of ways to play it, emulation, getting the old systems, playing the old systems through like some cheap Chinese handheld. You know,
Yeah.
you have more options than there is money to buy, and I mean I don't like to bring up the oh, there's going to be a gaming crash, because it's not going to crash. I mean, if something does happen, it's not going to be like the same as the 83 crash.
Yeah.
Um,
Although it would be nice though if it
I mean,
was.
it would be nice, but at the same time, I mean, the thing is, that was mostly like a North American video game industry thing.
Yeah.
Japan and like Europe were
Yeah.
fine. Um, but the thing is, there's so many avenues to get your entertainment from nowadays. A game being like hundreds of hours long, and the only reason games are like that is because this takes 100 hours. If you're like if you're not cheap, but like if you're like a broke college student and this is the only game you can buy, that'll give me all these hours of time to distract myself. And it's like,
Yeah, and
I don't
like
know,
the original Final Fantasy VII was like what, around 40 hours? Now each part of the remake trilogy is around 40 hours and like yeah, the gameplay is fun, but it's not that fun.
I mean, it's like you gotta think about like, is it really worth putting in the money and all this and time, just
Yeah.
to do all this anymore? And I mean, I still play games, but not as much as I used to. I think there's plenty of things. I mean, here's my thing: once you start earning money like a regular job, you'll have more options than of things to do with your time,
Yeah, and
more
less time to
fulfilling.
do it with.
Well, that, and also you'll be lamenting like, man, why didn't I like try to learn Japanese when I was like in high school?
Yeah.
You don't have like the pressure of a job, and you have all this time. Especially if you don't like take like any advanced classes in high school or something. Um, so I mean, it is what it is, but I just don't think every game being open world, um, being able to go anywhere, do anything, it's it just because it worked for Grand Theft Auto like 20 something, like 23 or 24 years ago,
Yeah.
doesn't mean you have to every game has to be like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't make
Like you
games
said
any cheaper.
earlier, like
Yeah.
they're vying, they're all competing for your time and your attention because every game has to be a live service now, so every game has to keep you coming back, keep you hooked.
Well, yeah, the multiplayer games especially.
Yeah. If you're willing to part with $700 and that's like no big deal for you, and that's like fine or whatever, but like I said earlier, think about like the impact all this stuff has on the gaming industry. Like if consumers at large are okay with paying $700 for a console, then Sony sees that and they're like, oh, well, I guess this is okay. I guess maybe we could try 900 next time.
Yeah. especially in a time where, I mean, you know money, things have not gotten any cheaper in the last couple of years. Um, you know, it's definitely it's something you have to start weighing as far as, and I say that, and I don't even know how bad it is personally. I don't live on my own. I still live at home with my parents. I think because of a lot of things to do with uh, how things are in the real world. Um, it's better to be play. You got to be budget.
Yeah,
You got to go on a budget now. Like even
yeah,
harder than you had to do before.
yeah. And yeah, it's weird to me seeing people like defend this, like even if like
Yeah, the few. I mean, I haven't seen any defense. I mean, even the PS5 thread, as like a lot of people are like, no way. But yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, it could be like a Twitter exclusive thing. That's where like all the shills feel safe or whatever.
Or the bots. The few bots
Yeah,
that are still alive.
yeah. But it's like, especially like you said, after everything we've been through the past few years, all these prices going up, inflation and whatnot. Um, and people will use that self-inflation and be like, oh, actually the PS3 would cost this much if it came out today. Well, it's like, okay, well, my income hasn't inflated, so like I don't know what you're trying to say with your inflation argument there, because I'm not making that much more than I used to, you know and that goes, I think, for most people. If you look at like average incomes, like they really haven't gone up that much over the years, whereas like groceries, just regular groceries, kind of skyrocketed. Like I know whenever we go out to our local grocery, like if we're just stocking up on stuff for the week, we can't expect to spend any less than $100. And just like 6-7 years ago, it was pretty easy to keep it under 100.
Yeah, it's like you almost have to go and like start up your own garden if you even have space and the land for it.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just whenever I see people defend high prices of things that come from corporations that are worth billions of dollars, it's like, what are you doing, man? Come on.
Yeah, and you got to think too. Like this stuff is like all made in China by some poor,
Yeah.
Chinese person who's like having to do it. With a
Borderline slave who's getting paid like 7 cents a day.
yeah, and if they complain about it, social credit score is
Yeah.
right down to the bottom.